Welcome to Wire Guild. This tutorial makes a very pretty brooch or a stick pin, and it's in a flower shape, as you can see. Now I've made these quite simpler with just one row of petals, and for that you're going to need some 1mm or 18 gauge round wire and just some beads for the center. However, if you want, you can make these with as many layers and you can sort of pile them up. Now what I've done to start off with is I have got the rough size that I want my finished brooch or pin to be. And then I've drawn very badly, because honestly drawing is not my forte, my little leaves on it. And what that will do is it will give me a rough idea of the size that I need to be bending the wire to make these petals. You could use a thicker gauge if you wanted, and they will impact on the way your flower looks. Now if I look through this, it's about 3/4 of an inch going from the center of the circle to the edge. So I need a little bit extra. As you bend the wire, it takes up quite a bit. So because I want them about 3/4 of an inch, I will need 1 inch for each length. So I need to count that up. So 1 inch down, 1 inch back, 1 inch down, 1 inch back. So you're using sort of 2 inch per petal. So for me, for a 5 petal piece, that will be sort of 10 inches. Then I need extra. I need an extra 3 inch for the pin and an extra inch for the end. So I'm looking at about 14 inches of wire to create this. Now you will work your own out as you want it. You may want to do a really big one, in which case obviously you're going to need a bit more wire. Actually not cleaning this, but rubbing it with the cloth because I want it a little bit firmer than it is. I buy fully soft wire, so it just needs a little bit of help being a bit firmer. So let's just straighten this end out and let's have a look. I'm going to measure a couple of inches in to start off with, and then I'm going to start my first bend. So I bent it, put my pliers over the top, and I'm just, come here, tightening it up. Don't press your finger too hard against the wire when you're doing this, because you've got a tendency to nip your finger and it hurts. So I try and keep my finger out of the way while I'm doing that and get it tightened up. You could use square wire to do this if you have square wire. It does make this process easier, but I like doing flowers out of round wire. So my next bend is, if I put my wires against my ruler, it's going to be that inch in. So I'm gonna, sorry, my hand's in the way. I've nipped it at the inch point and I've put a bend in it so I know where I'm going. Don't worry about being too precise on this. It is a flower, and if one petal happens to be, a tad longer than another, it really doesn't make any difference. So pliers over the top and squeeze that down and bring it together. Now I need another inch on, grip, put a little bend in, and then I can bend that back. There we go. And then pliers over the top and tighten that up. There we go. The tighter this is, the pointier that your petals will be at the end. If you don't want to have a point at the end of the petals, you could use your round nose pliers and bend these with the round nose, but only on the outer edge. Now, we started off with 2 inches. So that is, if you like, pointing towards the middle. So all the bends that are on the side of the longer wire that we cut there, as you can see to your right of the screen, is going to be the center of our flower. You will need to put a bend in that that's sharp, but if you want the outer edges of your petal to be rounded, you can do those, come here, it's rather lively, with round nose pliers. but I'm going for nice sharp petals on each turn. Just open that out slightly. And let's do another. Five petals? Oh dear. 5 petals is a nice number for a flower. However, if you want your flower to be much, much more impressive, what I would suggest you do is use the same formula for the amount of wire that you need to start off with and do 1 row. Then you can take a shorter amount of wire, but sufficient to do 5 petals but smaller, leaving you 2 ends, and then you can create a secondary flower that you can pop inside, sort of over the top of this flower, giving you a double layer of petals, which is really very pretty. But in this instance, I'm only going to show you one. It's just as easy for you to add another because we'll have gone through everything. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my last petal now that I'm creating. I will want the both ends of wire to be pointing downwards. That's when I know I've got the right number of pairs. You can see that that one in the middle is a little bit littler and one's a bit bigger. It doesn't matter. Once they're in a circle, you're not going to notice that. So I'm going to pull these out. You see how we're going inwards now? There we go. Go pull a bit further. And then I'm going to start and shape them. Shape them with my finger and bring the end wire round. Then in the middle, I'm going to shape by pushing in to the wire. Again, pushing with your finger. Now, if your fingers aren't strong enough to do this, use something else. Use a pencil or a dowel or the end of your round nose pliers, anything at all. I like using my fingers because it gives me a softer, more natural curve, because fingers do give a little bit. But if this makes your fingers hurt, or if you have arthritis, something like this, and you can't do this, use something else. Use something rounded. So let's just, whoops, move you out of the way. You can already see now that the flower is beginning to form. To the last one. And down and in. Right, I want to bring them round now so they're evenly placed. At the moment, they're not. We've got the top 2 that don't look like a flower, they look all flat. So keep edging and moving and just stretching until your flowers go all the way around like that. Now I'm going to make a stick pin first. Because I'm making a stick pin, I can take my shorter wire. Let's just get some pliers. There. And I'm going to pull that between those 2 petals, slightly bending it as I pull. I don't want to pull too hard because I don't want to distort that petal that it's coming from. So I want to know where it's going to. Bring it round the top. Come here. Trying to pull it into the gap there, but without distorting that petal. That's why I was being very gentle with it. And bring that round. Now I have the other wire from the other side. Let's find somewhere to put that one. That can go in that petal. I'm not really bothered where it goes as long as it goes between 2 other petals so that it stops all movement. Bend that round a little bit further and flatten that down. Now where do you want to be? You can go between that one, can't you? As long as it doesn't go into a gap, it's fine. You know, into one of the ones that's open, so it drops through and into a petal. As long as it goes on an edge, that's absolutely fine. So I've wrapped all the way around, and then this little one, I'm going to trim quite close and press down. Now, if we were making a brooch, you know, a pin that actually sort of clicks into itself, we would need that end for our, I don't even know if it has a proper name, but the bit that the pin clicks into, we would need that for that. But first of all, I am showing you like a stick pin. So for that one, I've just trimmed it off and pressed it down. So I have a flower and a long stem. Now I'm going to work these petals a little bit. So round nose pliers in, open out, make them a little bit fatter at the bottom. And put them in. If you do bouquets or tiaras or things like that, these flowers are great for decorating, and you can just make them like this and use that stem to wire them into something else, and they look wonderful in bouquets or in tiaras. So I'm just going to wrap around again. I want that really secure, and back around the back. It doesn't matter if you create a little blob in the middle, because most flowers have a raised area. Now curve those petals upwards a little bit just then with my fingers. Now that's going to be my stick pin, but I don't think it's actually going to be strong enough, so that's going to need a little bit more strength. So I've got a steel block and a hammer, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tap this wire, and I'm going to tap that. I've taken the sound of it out because quite honestly it's deafening when I start breaking pieces of wire. And I'm just giving that a tap right at the top. I am going to put a curl in this so it sits well, so I don't want to harden it too much, but I have given it a little bit more strength. Round nose pliers on, and then we're going to start and put a bend in all the way around. Can you see how the wire, I've got a bit of a gap, and then I've got my circle all the way around. Close that circle up, and then you have a stick pin. Again, if that was a brooch, that would be our pin that went across the back, and we would have a little loop to catch it into. And because this is a stick pin, we don't need that. So let's just beat it up a little bit more. These are wonderful for scarves, you know, popping into a buttonhole, anything like that. But they do need that little bit more strength. If you wanted, you could get away with making these with a thicker wire, but do be careful with the flower. The thicker the wire or the harder the wire, the harder it is to actually make those petals into the right shape and into a smooth curve. Okay. So I've got a file and I'm rounding the ends. We don't want this to have a sharp end. Anything with a sharp end, although it will pass into fabric easily, what you're actually doing is try to cut the threads as it goes through, and you really don't want that. So all I'm doing is very, very gently rounding this so it's perfectly smooth, and then what it will do is it'll push the fibres of whatever you're pushing it into to one side and pass through. So we don't want it sharp because that will cut and snag. What we want is perfectly smooth. I know you do get a lot of pins on commercial pieces that are sharp, but we want smooth. Right, straighten that up. So a little tiny flower stick pin. Let's say you wanted to make a brooch. So I've made another flower, and I'm going to create this piece here, but I'm going to create the little loop that holds it on the other side so you can see what I'm doing. So I've created a flower just like I did before with the bending, but I've got my short end stuck out instead of trimming it off and pressing it down. I'm going to get a piece of, actually I'll just file that down. Got a little bit of a sharp snag on it as that one, I don't want that. You can buy really cute little tools that have got like a domed burr inside, and it goes over the top of the wire and you just twiddle it. And I have one somewhere, honestly, but I can never lay my hands on it. So round nose pliers, and I'm just going to twist around and around It needs to go around more than once. We're not just going around so that it touches. We're creating a spiral. Now what I'm doing is I'm separating that spiral. So I want it to be more like a spring than a close together coil. So I've got a little gap in there. And that gap is where we're going to put the other half of our pin. So let me grip a little bit up from the flower. Let's go all the way around. Think about the way you're going around as well. This is going to sit away from the back of the flower. Now this is quite a little one. It doesn't really matter. A little bit will hold it. Normally I would make these a little bit more spread out, but it doesn't matter. I can always give it a tug. Now that goes down and into that spiral and it holds it. Now I'm just going to have a play with this because I really did that a little bit too close. So I can just pull that out, tighten that spring. The reason you put your spring on is because you're constantly opening and closing a brooch. If you just bend the wire at a right angle, after a period of time, that will become work hardened and it may crack and break. Whereas if you put that little spiral in and make a spring, the wire seems to continue indefinitely with it. So let me just pull that. I just need that to go a little bit further out. There we go. Does that click underneath nicely? Yep. I do a lot of twiddling with the back of these just to make sure that it's fitting right. And that's your brooch fitting. However, it's a bit boring like that. So let's get some beads. Hang on a minute, where have I put them? And some finer wire. The finer wire I'm going to use is 0.4, but anything that you've got kicking about at all that will go through your beads will do as the finer wire. It's okay, anything you've got. The beads that I'm going to use are 4mm Swarovski bicones, but again, whatever, whatever you like using. If you wanted, you could fill the whole of the petals with beads and make the whole thing beaded. Up to you. So I've passed the wire through and I've wrapped it round. I'm going to cut that end off because it's a bit lumpy. And I'm going to pop a bead on. All the way down to the centre of the flower. Support it with my thumb. Take the wire around. Where am I going to take my wire around? Around the back and back through the middle of a petal. There we go. Pull that nice and tight. And then add another bead. Like I say, if you want, you could fill all the petals with beads. You could have done your second row of petals. Now, if you'd done your second row of petals, what you would have done is passed your two thicker wires, sort of through the middle of the others and wrap them round in some way just to hold them on. Just a quick wrap round the back and hold them in place. These are very sweet as Mother's Day gifts. Those, if you are selling, you will get periods of time when little tiny girls or boys come to the stand and they want to buy something for mummy. These are perfect for that. They don't need to fit, so it's not like a bracelet or a ring where they're not sure whether this will fit mummy or grandma. It's something that they can buy that they know they're going to like. They like the pretty colours on it. But it's sort of universal. Anybody can wear these. I actually did a full set of these with a feather backing for a wedding for the men's buttonholes. I don't know if they call them buttonholes in America, but anyway, the floral decorations that men wear at weddings. And they went down really well, actually. They liked them. They felt that they were a little bit more masculine. So the wire's just coming in and around. Occasionally I'll wrap around the beads, or I'll wrap around an individual bead just to give it a little bit more. wrapping the wire around a bead. I don't know if any of you have seen the nested bead earrings that I do. It allows the bead to sink into the metal because you're bringing an edge of metal around the bead, which makes it fit better. It's sort of, I don't know, it just sits nicer. And I'm just keeping going until I've got, well, I would if I could get in that, there we go. Didn't want to find the hole. Till I've got a nice little clump in the middle. Where would I put you? And I just keep going round and around. Making sure it's straight when you pull. If you are fond of weaving, you could start and you could weave in between these petals, and you would have woven petals and then put the beads in the center. You could edge the beads by go through. Really does not want to go through there. If you get one that doesn't want to go through, sometimes you need to give it a pull with your pliers, and that will help. Let's go around. Bring it round. I think I've probably got enough in. I don't know if I'm going to use that last bead. Hang on, let's have a look. Bringing that wire back to the front. I'm just wrapping it a couple of times around one of the stems of the petals, just to give it a little bit more strength. I'm just going to add this last bead. I don't even know how many I've popped on here. Pop you in the middle. And down and back to the back. Wrap around. Just tighten that in. That was the end from where we started. So I'll just wrap that around that petal a couple of times, and then I will smooth that down. I do that with a twist so that the wire actually lays flat to the thicker wire that's been wrapped around, and it isn't just pushed. Sometimes when you just push the wire down, it will pop back up the minute you take the pliers away. If you actually smooth it on to the wire with a twist, they tend to stay put an awful lot better. So I have a little floral stick pin with a group of nice sparkly beads in the middle. I added some blue beads to one of the pins. Like I say, so many uses for these. You could even use jump rings and add them together and make them into a necklace. Your jump rings would just go through the end of the petals, and they're very pretty. So I got a nice, dear, terrible English. I've got a nice photo of the two there that shows them off really well. Thank you very much for watching. Happy wrapping.